What are we doing, man? What's up, Sooner Nation, and welcome to another edition of the WhackoReview podcast, where we go over all things OU football from the previous weekend every Monday. I'm Steve Curtis, the voice behind WhackoSooners, and today the Sooners are 5-1, ranked 14th team in the country, and we have the unfortunate task of discussing the disastrous loss to Texas at the Cotton Bowl from this last Saturday. We're going to break it all down right here on WhackoSooners. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Make sure to hit that bell button so you never miss an episode. Plus, you can follow us on all of our socials, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter X, all at WhackoSooners, for live news updates, game time highlights, and of course, a few memes and reels to keep it lighthearted and fun, despite how difficult that is at this moment in time. Go hit those follows so you're always in the Whacko loop. 23-6. 23-6. We got cooked. For the third time in the Brent Venables era, the Oklahoma Sooners failed to score a touchdown against Texas. John Mateer was not ready. No matter how much we wanted to see him play and succeed, he was not ready. And putting him in was a mistake. Now, before I go any further, so we can get this out of the way, if there are any Texas fan haters, or Texas people that are haters in here, I don't know what you're doing, wasting all your time in here, because this doesn't really concern you. But to the Texas fans, y'all earned it. Even if it was just off the fact that Oklahoma shot themselves in the foot, you still played better football and you won the game. Props to y'all. No argument here. Y'all won the game, fair and square. And we're not going to complain here about some of the officiating calls, because there were some stupid holds, a couple of pass interferences, and 2 illegal blocks in the back that were missed. I'm not saying that it was a scam or it was rigged against Oklahoma, just saying that there was some stuff that was missed or a couple of things that weren't quite right. But we're not going to chalk those things up to changing the game like Auburn fans, because ultimately that didn't change the outcome of the game. Those things wouldn't have changed the outcome of the game. Let's do the mundane task of going through some numbers real quick. So, Oklahoma had a grand total of 258 total yards, 210 pass, 48 rush, had 16 first downs, 6 of 17 on third down. The rushing attack was abysmal. The slight upward trend that we'd been seeing, getting a little bit better here and there, making some tweaks, getting a little bit better, false hope. There was nothing to be had. Torrey Blaylock went for 33 yards on 11 carries. That's still only 3 yards average per carry. That's not going to cut it. And we will get into the run game here later. I have some choice words about that. John was not ready, as already discussed. And it was a mistake to put him in. We should have played Michael Hawkins. And that's simply on the physical aspect. Forget the mental. John was not fully present on Saturday. He was not ready. He missing the better part of 2.5 weeks. Well, 3 weeks actually in total of practice because of the recovery of his hand. Granted, mental reps, of course, this is the guy that he's in his 3rd year of running this offense, or this type of offense, with the same offensive coordinator. So mentally, he knows what he's supposed to do. But physically, missing 3 weeks and not getting live reps with your teammates and your weapons, you're not going to be as attuned to it as you need to be to make zero mistakes. Michael Hawkins had those 3 weeks to get set and ready to go. I think the time off did more damage to, I think Mateer's time off did more damage to Oklahoma's performance than his actual injury to his thumb. He played with happy feet. He was missing open reads constantly. He was playing hero ball almost. He was trying to do too much by himself. On a 2nd and 20, he was looking for a bomb on a post in a corner route, instead of just taking, an in to Kanik for about 7, that knowing Kanik, he'd go and get another 6 or 7 after it. And that would make it 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6, something like that. Still 3rd and long, but it's at least manageable. John's numbers themselves, he was 20 for 38. You can't ask that guy to throw 38 passes with that injury coming off of it. He didn't even throw that many against Auburn when it was fresh. And then at least his hand hadn't been cut into and messed around with and nails put in it. So he had a 52.6% completion, 202 yards. The other 8 passing yards came from the flea flicker by Giovanni Gibson. That was a fun play to watch. I really liked that. John had 0 passing touchdowns, 0 rushing touchdowns, obviously, because Oklahoma scored no touchdowns on Saturday. But here's the kicker. John was incredibly inaccurate, and that led to 3 interceptions. The first one was to Jaron Kanik, and he was off, got picked off. The next one was in the end zone, and that was stupid. The whole thing about those last couple of plays, that last drive going into halftime, that was stupid altogether, and we'll talk about that when we get to the coaches. But that pick was stupid. Just throw it away at that point. Throw it away so you can at least get the field goal. Because 9-3 going into halftime, where the game was feeling at that point, would have made a big difference. Not necessarily changed the outcome of the game, but you would have felt a lot better about it going into halftime. Momentum shifted further and further away from Oklahoma in multiple points in the game. Then John had 14 carries for 5 yards. He got sacked, I think it was 6 times. So 5 or 6 times. So, of course, that's going to detract from his rushing yards. In my opinion, should have had an extra 33, but we're not going to argue about holding calls because we're not Auburn fans. We didn't play well enough to the point where penalties, didn't matter. We should have played to the point where we were winning and penalties wouldn't have changed the outcome of the game. Texas did play to the point where the penalties wouldn't have changed the outcome of the game. John should have been picked off at least 2 more times. Would have had a total of 5. He got away with a few of them. Now, I say all of this. None of this is negative at John as a player or as a person. I absolutely love John. I think he will be fine, both physically and mentally with time. I want to see Michael Hawkins play in South Carolina. John needs to sit out until his hand is better and he needs his mind to cool down and he needs to practice a bit more before he plays again. And I don't think he should be practicing on that hand right now because he was bleeding during the game. And a lot of people are throwing out comparisons to Baker's Heisman season of he had 41 total touchdowns and only 5 interceptions total, and John has 6 touchdowns and 6 interceptions. I don't really care about that. Right now, at this point, after Saturday, I'm not looking for a Heisman season for Mateer right now. I'm looking for a return to consistency and a return to him doing his job and him being healthy. That's my biggest concern, him being healthy. Then us being good and consistent on the field. And then we'll talk about potential of Heisman performance later in the year if he balls out the rest of his playing time this year, and potentially if he comes back next year, would feel much better about talking about it then. My concern right now is not the Heisman. It is not a national championship. It is not even an SEC championship. Ultimately, even, and I might get some flack for this, not even the playoffs. We have no business going to the playoffs and getting our butts handed to us if we can't run the ball and if we can't figure out what's going on with the O-line to give John help. And if our receivers can't stop dropping the ball. Now, I will give the wide receivers some grace for drops because John was not terribly accurate on Saturday. The rushing attack. Appalling. 15 carries for 42 yards off the running backs. John got the remainder of that rushing attack, which was 5 more yards, 6 more yards. Torrey Blaylock did okay, as we said, 11 carries, 33 yards. The Jaden Ott experiment is over. The Jaden Ott experiment is over. I want that kid out of Norman, Oklahoma. I want the money that we've paid him back. I want him back in Chino, where he comes from. I want him thrown out of the state of Oklahoma, never to return. That guy has been a waste of time, of money, and of effort from this coaching staff. This guy comes in as the highest rated running back in the portal after being a stud where he was at Cal in his 2023 season before his injuries in 2024. Jim Nagy, our all-powerful and all-fantastic GM, and I do not say that sarcastically. I love Jim Nagy and I love the Nagy process, as I've said before. But we go and drop a bag to get this guy. And he does not hold up his end of the deal. He is not physical. He's not dedicated. He doesn't put in effort. He's a lazy piece of... I can't even finish that. We're trying to keep this a family-friendly program. He is not living up to his end of the deal. He is robbing the University of Oklahoma blind. And we were okay with it those first four games of the season, right? Oh, he had an injury in fall camp. Oh, he's getting over it. Maybe he has some injury PTSD from last year, blah, blah, blah. Temple, he wasn't doing anything. And finally, Brent said, you wish he was further along in every way. Okay, he shows up for the Kent State game after 2 weeks of preparation. And look, saw the most of him we'd ever seen. And for the most part, looked to be doing all right. And we're thinking, okay, you'll see Jaden Ott and Torrey Blaylock a lot on Saturday against Texas. The only play that I remember watching Jaden Ott participate in, and I know he had plenty of snaps there in the first quarter, and you saw less of him throughout the game, because he had the 1 carry for 2 yards. And I know that from the stat sheet. I don't remember seeing it. I was there at the stadium, and I don't remember watching it, because the one I do remember is so glaringly burned into my mind. It was there in the first quarter. I believe it was the third offensive drive Oklahoma had of the game. Handed off to Deion Burks on the jet sweep. And Ott goes out, and there's Anthony Hill Jr. staring him right down the barrel. And Ott knows what play they're running. He knows that Deion is coming on the jet sweep. What does Jaden Ott do? He's going to block Anthony Hill Jr., and Deion Burks is going to go for about 10, 15 yards, right? No. Jaden Ott sees Anthony Hill Jr. right in front of him, cutting to the inside to try to get Burks. And what does Ott do? He steps on the brakes and leans away from where Burks is, and Burks gets tackled back at the line of scrimmage. Maybe a 1-yard gain. Maybe. Jaden Ott is a lazy, no good, washed up, not even washed up because he's not been good here. He has been a waste. The experiment is over. Get him out of Norman. I never want to see him again. This guy's done. I want to see more of Taylor fumbling Tatum before I see any more Jaden Ott at Owen Field or on any football field that the University of Oklahoma is playing at the rest of this year. I never want to see Jaden Ott's face again associated with the University of Oklahoma. You pass block for your receivers. You be physical. You do what you got to do for your guys. As soon as I saw that, I started calling for Javonte Barnes. And I know I've been hard on him when it comes to being a running back and finding the holes and being patient and being an explosive runner. But at least the man will block for his teammates, for his receivers, for his quarterback. At least he is dependable. He's not the most explosive guy, but he will put his head down and he will do the work. Xavier Robinson will do the work. Torrey Blaylock, a true freshman, the best running back in that room, will do the dang work. But this kid that we've paid all this money for, and we've put so much time and effort into him this offseason, or early in the offseason going into fall camp, and so much patience, he won't do anything that we want him to do. So get him out of Norman. Now that brings me to DeMarco frickin' Murray. What are we doing, DeMarco? What exactly is your rotational plan? He constant, and I know I've talked about DeMarco Murray before in a previous pod a couple weeks ago. The whole rotational plan around the running backs makes no sense. No sense whatsoever. It is we go week to week. We see who does the best in practice. Whoever has the best week of practice is going to be the starter. No, you pick one. You give him the majority of the first team reps, and you ride with that guy. This whole rotating and, I don't know, we've seen a lot of Torrey Blaylock. Then we saw Javonte Barnes in those first couple of games. And then threw some Jaden Ott in there, threw a little bit of Xavier Robinson in against Temple too. Not quite sure how it was going to go. Kent State, we saw only Torrey Blaylock and Jaden Ott. And then on Saturday, it was Torrey Blaylock and Jaden Ott. Then Jaden Ott went out for Xavier Robinson, and we still didn't see Javonte Barnes. Make up your mind, DeMarco. Pick one. Pick one, pick two. Pick the top two and keep them in at all times. Pick your workhorses and freaking ride them. Freaking ride them, man. Since DeMarco has come to Oklahoma, when we hired him at the end of the 2019 season, as soon as we lost Jalen Hurts and we were bringing in Spencer Rattler and we were getting ready to go, what do we start doing? We see our rushing attack slowly get worse and worse and worse and worse. 2020, it wasn't great. Of course, that was COVID year. Kennedy Brooks sat out. And then we go and we see 2021. Kennedy Brooks was great, but that was Kennedy Brooks. Eric Gray goes nuts in 2022, but that was Eric Gray. And then Tawee Walker was okay, but gets injured. Gavin Sawchuk was okay the back half of 2023. Then 2024, even when the offensive line was working, except for the Alabama game, and I don't count the Maine game where Javonte Barnes went for over 200 yards because that was against Maine. But even when the line was doing its job and working to the point when we could run the ball effectively, DeMarco Murray's running backs could not do anything in 2024. And we ran the ball better in 2024 than we've run it all 2025. 2025, it's gotten worse. I want DeMarco Murray out. And I say this as someone who's grown up around the University of Oklahoma in terms of as a fan, went to OU for a period of time. My mother's entire side of the family is from Oklahoma. Deep roots at the University of Oklahoma. And we are proud of our rushing attack. And we don't have anything. And it started going downhill when we brought DeMarco Murray in. I get it. Absolute legend in his day at Oklahoma. Offensive MVP. All pro. Absolute monster, both in college and in the NFL. But his guys that he has coached at the University of Oklahoma haven't done anything. Get him out. It's time for a change. He's had 5 years. No, this is his sixth. This is his sixth year. 20, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, this is his sixth year, and it's gotten worse every year. I want him out. Offensive line. Similar sentiments. A little bit less intensity. I love Bill Beatonbow. But he's not getting it out of the guys anymore as much as he used to. This offensive line on Saturday was not good. Going into this game, I gave them the benefit of the doubt because they had risen to the occasion against Michigan and Auburn, both of whom have pretty dang good defensive lines. Their front sevens at both those schools, Michigan and Auburn, are both pretty dang good. And they rose to the occasion. They played not as great against Illinois State, against Temple, against Kent State. But they rose to the occasion when it mattered, against teams that they really needed to perform well against. And they did not on Saturday. Against a defensive line that got dog-walked by Florida's. Now, and that's not to slight Florida's offensive line, because Florida's offensive line is pretty good. But Texas' offensive line played lazy against Florida. And our defensive line could not get home as much as it needed to. And we'll talk about the defense a little bit. And I'm not super hard on the defense after this performance. And I'll get into that at some point. I mean, heck, even looking at Auburn's defensive line against Oklahoma's offensive line. Auburn on Saturday went and owned Georgia for that first half of the Georgia-Auburn game on Saturday night. All right, dominated in the first half, and then eventually, as we predicted, Georgia was able to pull away. Their defense was finally able to get home. The penalties on our offensive line. Come on, guys. False start by Fabechi, hold by Fasusi. Granted, I think that hold's a little funny, but I'm not going to complain about that too much because, again, we aren't Auburn fans. We don't complain about officiating, even if it does change the outcome of the game, unless it's 2023 Bedlam. Howland was out. And all the injuries on the offensive line again, like A lot of those guys aren't the top guys top of the depth chart when it comes to those positions. It's still good to have depth. I don't understand why Brent Venables has had just bad luck with his offensive line's health in the last season and a half, 2024 and up to this point in 2025. I have never seen anything like it where a coach, because all of the injuries on the team are the offensive line. All right, Jeremiah Newcomb's out with his injury over at corner, or DB, I guess, because he plays a little bit of corner and safety. And Taylor Tatum's hamstrings, but there's a lot of other stuff going on with that. Like, all the injuries. Oh, and Cade McIntyre, tight end, also out with an injury. But all the other ones are all offensive line. All of them. What is going on? Bill Beatonbow, I love you, but we got to figure out what the heck is happening, because this offensive line couldn't stop anything. They couldn't get anything in the run game going. They had no push, no discipline, no consistency. The pass blocking was terrible when we'd been really good up to this point in the season. Oklahoma's schedule was cupcake. No. Everyone was saying Keldrick Falk is going to kill John Mateer because, he's such a good edge rusher. Okay, John Mateer got sacked once versus Auburn. Okay, the offensive line was good against Auburn. Wasn't great, especially in the run game. But they did their job well enough to the point for Oklahoma to win. They did nothing on Saturday. Not going to work. And we just got some great commits coming in this class for 2026 cycle, going into next spring. And then the 2027 class, we've got Cooper Hackett and Caden Penny already in the lineup. Top 2 players in the state of Oklahoma. Come on. We got to at least put something good together to keep those guys there. I bet you they will still stay, but we got to keep recruiting. And I heard this at OU Insider earlier as I was headed home. Parker and Brandon were talking about, just this coaching staff has spent so much money to get elite pass rushers and defensive linemen. Just linemen across the board on the defense. They need to start spending like that on the offensive line. They have to. Absolutely have to. You cannot win in the SEC without stout trenches. We've got a stout defensive trench. Our offensive line, terrible. Again, we talked about the run game. We talked about Jaden No Block Ott. Very little to say about the receivers. Isaiah Satania did his best. Jaron Kanik did not get targeted nearly as much as he should have, because that Kung Fu Kanik's a monster in space. He gets open, and when he has the ball in his hands, he's going to make you pay for it. Drop passes like crazy. And again, Mateer's accuracy will play into that a little bit. But sometimes you're just out there wide open, and it's put in a pretty good spot for you to get it, and you just drop it and you miss it. That's not going to fly. Shout out to Jermichael Carter, however, the McNeese transfer wide receiver, with that bat down that saved Mateer from his 4th interception late in the 4th quarter, because Mateer looks off to his right onto the Texas sideline. Carter's out there, and the corners rolled down on him and gotten on the inside. Mateer stares that guy down, throws it right at him. Jermichael comes up, spins around, and bats the ball down from the cornerback so that it doesn't get picked off again. MVP of the game right there. Jermichael Carter. You heard it here. Love that. Love that. Hey, oh, wait. Spike the ball. Fantastic. I want to see Javonte Gibson targeted more. I don't know what... We've been hearing all this jazz about him in the spring, how he was wide receiver 1, and this isn't a knock on him. We just didn't see it. We didn't see any of it. And we will talk about some of that when we get to the coaches a little bit later. To wrap up the game review, defense played out of their minds in the first half, holding this Texas offense to 3 points. 3 points. The Dog Pound was having a good time in the first quarter. They were getting to Arch. They were having some fun. They were getting all over him. But then, of course, offense stalled out a little bit there towards the end of the first quarter, kind of into the second quarter. And that is when the fans in the OU half of the stadium started to fall silent. And then Texas was able... I could hear Arch Manning whisper down in the Texas end zone because of how quiet the OU fans were when Texas was on offense. And the defense had no help. And, of course, the offense wasn't playing complimentary football. And then Texas had that long 7.5-minute drive to open up the second half and got good momentum, got a good rhythm. And then the OU fans checked out. And the defense just eventually got gas and just couldn't do it. Still held the Texas offense to 16 points. All right, I understand that the total points scored was 23, but defense is not responsible for special teams points off of that punt return. So, the end result, Oklahoma's defense had a better record or better stat line against Auburn, or had a worse performance against Auburn, allowing 17, as opposed to allowing 16 versus Texas. And all the Texas fans have been in my Instagram and TikTok mentions and comments about, oh, how was that defense? Okay, we only gave up 16 points. Auburn scored more than that. And Auburn's bad. That's not something for y'all to hang your hat on. Now, granted, you still won, absolutely. But it was a one-score game opening the fourth quarter. It was 13-6. Still a competitive game. Then the punt return happened, and then you knew it was over. I think it was over the moment John threw that second interception there in the end zone just before halftime. I think that's when the game was over. Now, I mentioned a second ago the fans, how they were going quiet. And this one's really important to me, and we are going to spend a good bit of time on it. Now, I want to preface this. Fans, I understand. We played terribly. It hurts. I understand. Let me preface that first. But we have to talk about what the hell y'all have been doing in the Cotton Bowl the last 7 years. If you are one of those people like me who was there the entire game from start to finish and cheered every down that we were on defense through all 4 quarters of the game to confuse the Texas offense, this that follows is not directed at you. You are a real one, and I love you. I have attended 6 of the last 7 Red River games. My first one was in 2019. I didn't go in 2020, and I have been to every one since then. And every single time I have gone, the OU collective fan base has disappointed me. We came into this game 5-0. High on life, an elite defense, a stud quarterback. Texas is coming into this game 3-2, losing to an objectively bad 1-3 Florida team. Looking like crap against their 3 cupcake schedules. We were high. We had the opportunity to put Texas's postseason hopes and smother it in its crib. And what do the average OU fans at the Cotton Bowl do? We have 2 bad drives where we have to punt in the second quarter, but we are still leading and the defense is doing good. And what do OU fans do when we're on defense? They stop cheering because we're not dominating. We're not owning it. Okay, you're not going to dominate every moment of every game that you play. First quarter, Texas's first 2 drives, they started deep in our own territory, and they couldn't communicate and force themselves back with penalties of false starts because they couldn't make checks without getting confused because we were being so loud. But as soon as we have a couple not great drives, we check out. I had about 5 or 6 guys behind me, about probably 40s, 50s. Those guys were quiet. And I turned around at them and I looked at them, hey, come on, guys, cheer. And they're like, We were up 6-0. And our defense was playing out of its mind and offense was looking okay. And you're not participating? Come on. And like I said, I could hear Arch whisper in the Texas end zone. And I was back by the OU end zone. And I could hear Arch all the way down the other side. That's how quiet we were. Meanwhile, every Texas fan over on the other half of the stadium, no matter how bad their offense looked on those first couple of drives and how their defense had given some stuff up, Every single Texas fan over there, no matter how bad it was looking, was yelling so loud that they were willing to let their vocal cords bleed out and they die in their stands. And this is a 3-2 team that's been booing their own quarterback. We have not been booing our own quarterback, and we are silent as a crypt. To the OU fans that didn't cheer, you are flaky, you are fair weather, and you are undeserving of OU football. And I'm so mad about this because I care about the University of Oklahoma. I care about OU football. First and foremost. Those who do not support that team, no matter how bad they are playing, are not real fans. They are undeserving. They have zero right or reason to be in that stadium on game day if you are not willing to, like the Texas fans, yell until your vocal cords bleed out. If this alienates me from some of the fan base, fine. I don't really want you. I don't want the fans that aren't actual fans. I care about the sport, and I care about the university, and I care about the guys on that team. And so many of the people that show up at the Cotton Bowl did not go to OU. They're loosely affiliated. They're north of their 40s. And they're not full of juice. And they're not diehards. They're all mostly from DFW. But they want to go to the Cotton Bowl. And they want to watch OU play versus Texas. They want to go to the fair. But they don't want to participate. They don't want to be a factor in the game. They just want to sit there and have a good time. Do you know how many students at the University of Oklahoma would kill to make the trip from Norman to Dallas and go to that game and actually cheer for their team? But guess what? They can't because all of these fake fans are driving up the prices. And unlike the OU students, they can win the bidding wars for it. And they can afford the more expensive seats and tickets in general, period. It's not like OU kids are swimming in money like a lot, not all, but a lot of the kids down in Austin are. If the entire OU student body had the chance, if all 25 plus thousand of that student body had the opportunity to get into that stadium and cheer, it would have been a lot louder and the defense would have had a little bit more help. And who knows, maybe could have had some better moments and probably could have changed the game. Now, I'm not going to play this game of what ifs, but it's a possibility. Because the crowd is always a factor in that game. And leaving early, that's not okay either. All right? You stay and you cheer for your team no matter what. You do not be fair weather. You do not abandon them. If your family is in a burning house, you're not going to walk out without them, or at least I hope you're not. If you do, got some other stuff to talk about. But you don't abandon your squad. You don't abandon your family. You don't abandon your team. That is what so many people started doing in the third quarter when it was still 6-13. Come on. It's almost like the average people that go to the Cotton Bowl don't understand how a football game works and that the crowd has an impact on it. I go to home games in Norman all the time, and that place with its open end zones and the noise can go out was 5 times as loud for the Michigan game as it was in the Cotton Bowl at any point in the game. And that thing's a whole bowl. No way for the noise to go out except straight up. And the whole point of having the fans split at the 50 is so that enemy territory is difficult, but we made it a cakewalk. Come on! Just appalling behavior from the fan base the last several years. Every time. Even in 2023, the fans were too quiet. Too quiet. And that is that is my favorite game that I've ever witnessed in person. And it was still disappointing as heck because the fans only really got into it when Nick Anderson caught that last touchdown there to end the game. That was the only moment in my tenure going to the Red River game that the fan base has met my expectations. They've never surpassed it. Ever. And this is supposedly one of the best rivalries in college football. And again, I understand the team played terribly. And sure, we're not all going to be feeling great about it in the moment either, let alone after. I'm clearly not feeling great about it after the fact. But you still stand with your guys. So here's what's going to happen in 2026. You're either going to show up and you're going to cheer. You're going to cheer your hearts out until you can't talk for a week. And it's killing me to talk like this 24 hours after the game. This stuff hurts because of how loud I was being. But you're either going to cheer all dang game, and you are going to fight for your boys because they're fighting for you down there, or you're going to stay home and watch it in the silence that you love so much on your TV. It's a hell of a lot cheaper, and since y'all are so soft, you probably would like to have air conditioning while you watch it anyways, while you sit there doing nothing. Let the people that actually want to cheer afford to go to the game. Don't waste stadium space and not do your job. Now, I love Sooner Nation, all right? And I say this from a place of love. Do your job, because the team cannot do it alone. All right. We're running a little bit long. We got to wrap this up with the coaches. We already talked about DeMarco Murray and Bill Bedenbaugh. Bill, we need to see something come a little bit different up here in the next little while. I will give you one more year to produce something good before I say get out. I want DeMarco Murray out today. Bill Bedenbaugh, I will give you the rest of the year, and then we'll talk about next year. Emmett Jones, wide receivers coach, get your boys to catch the dang ball. Get them to catch the ball. I want Ben Arbuckle on probation. All right? Now, play calling, it was vanilla. It was usually short yardage throws between 3 and 12. And it was always leave it to the receivers to make big plays. Which, I love those guys, but only really Jaron Kanik has shown the ability to catch the ball and then make a big moment play after catching it. Isaiah Satania has had some good catches, but none of them have really had a big moment where they catch it and then they keep going. We've not had a single giant breakaway play where it's a big pass or even a little pass, and then they just wiggle out and they go score a touchdown or anything like that, or go for a big run. You could say the one to Satania down the sidelines against Michigan. You could say that was an example. You could. I wouldn't. Because, again, I grew up spoiled on Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray, and watching Hollywood Brown go nuts in Bedlam in 2017. But the offense was just vanilla. And that may have been an executive decision considering John's hand. But if you have to dial back your playbook to better work with your quarterback who's playing with a recovering surgery, a thumb that's recovering from surgery, put in the backup that definitely can physically make all this stuff and has had more reps in practice. Put in Michael Hawkins Jr. Can he do all the things that John can physically? Not necessarily. But I bet you his mind would have been in a better spot and his mechanics would have been much cleaner than John's. I think the ceiling with John at this moment in time when he's fully healthy, and the ceiling with Michael when he's fully healthy, I think John is up here. I think Mike is here. But given the context of the previous weeks, it was the other way around. You had John, you had Mike. I want John to get healthy. Duh. Should have sat him out. And I know I said I wanted to see him play, and I did want to see him play. But he clearly wasn't ready. So now, knowing what I know now, hindsight 2020, shouldn't have played John. And we've already talked about the offensive line, the running backs, said that was bad. Talked about the wide receivers dropping catches. I still say get rid of No Block Ott. Kick that kid out of Norman. Chase him back to California. Defense. Brent just got out-coached there in the second half. And the players got outplayed because they were gassed. That 7.5-minute drive to open the second half was the sign. Because if the interception in the end zone to close out the first half was the yellow light at a traffic stop, that Texas drive to open the second half was the red light. So Brent just got out-coached. The players got exhausted and got outplayed. The biggest issue I have with the defense is they tackled so bad. Robert Spears-Jennings played his worst game as a tackler. Missed everything in the book. And I love RJ. So this isn't hate on RJ. This is just saying he played his worst game that I've seen him play. Props to the secondary for at least locking down big explosive plays, but not doing a good job of being prepared for all those screens and little swing passes out to the flats. Because that's eventually all that Arch was doing. And here's the thing. This game did not answer any questions that the world has about Arch Manning in Texas, because they did not have a lot of big explosive pass plays like Texas fans want to be seeing after being spoiled with Sark and Quinn Ewers. This didn't answer any questions we have about Arch Manning whatsoever. All he did was check it down all day, because that's all he had to do, because Brent was just not able to get the guys on point and get defense in a rhythm. Now, of course, still the momentum shift and offense not playing complementary. Of course, the defense is going to get tired. Now, on the note of Brent, because this is going around a lot in the last 24 plus hours. I absolutely love Brent Venables, and there is no hiding that. You will never catch me saying I do not love the man as a human being and as a coach. But good Lord, man, you got to figure out what is happening with your offense. And it looked like it up until Saturday. It looked like through the first 5 games of the season, you had one that was serviceable, that could work, and it needed help in the run game. But there was nothing so glaring as to we can't run the ball. I need him to figure out how to bring back a good blend of pass and rush, which he's not had since 2022, or even then. He hasn't had a good blend on offense either. It was very run-heavy and explosive pass-heavy in 2022. It was a lot of medium pass-heavy with a good addition of run in 2023. 2024, there was nothing there. And this year, we've got some good passing but terrible running. You need to get some new position coaches. You need to go find a running back coach and an offensive line coach that are as crazy and determined and intense as you are and can produce. Because we've seen what you can produce out of the defense, okay? You and the staff that you've built on the defensive side of the ball has shown that it is intense and it will provide results. You need to find a running backs coach that can do that. You need to find a wide receivers coach that can do that. And you need to find an offensive line coach that can do that. I love Bill Bedenbaugh, but he's not a crazy man that's just, he's not Miguel Chavis. Because Miguel Chavis is defensive ends coach. Absolute nut job, and I love him. That's why R. Mason Thomas and Taylor Wine and Danny Okoye, PJ, and Marvin Jones, that's why that whole crowd in the defensive end room is fantastic. Because Miguel Chavis is absolutely nuts and good at what he does. Bill Bedenbaugh is intense and good at coaching and good at developing guys. But he's not insane. We need insanity in all of our coaches. Jay Valai for the cornerbacks, he's insane. I need more insanity. And then the play calling from Arbuckle, just like, I love Ben Arbuckle, but we're not pushing the ball down the field as much as we need to this year. Haven't seen enough of it. We had maybe 1 or 2 big attempts to go down the field, and John's inaccuracy with his hand just showed that. And then Arbuckle finally just went down to his pee-wee short check down plays. We need a winning formula. We need to put it all together. And I'd love nothing more than to see the culture that Brent has spent the last 4 years building, because we know the culture under Lincoln Riley and late Bob Stoops era was getting bad. And it was a whole barrel of sour apples, as Lincoln Riley is. I want nothing more than to see the quality of human being that Brent Venables and the guys he's recruiting and developing. I'd love nothing more than to see them go win and succeed. But we are now at the point where culture isn't enough. We need the results. Yes, we're 5-1. That's a far cry from last year, when we were 4-2 at this point in the year. And we at least have, when our stud quarterback is healthy, a good or a decent offense. But here's the thing. That one loss on the schedule was pretty dang horrific. And the schedule only gets harder. We go to South Carolina next week, to Williams-Brice Stadium. Now, they've lost a lot of pieces, and they're probably not as intense as South Carolina in 2024, but it's still going to be tough. Ole Miss, they didn't look great against Wazoo on Saturday, but dang, Trinidad Chambliss is good. We got to figure out how to do that. Then we go to Tennessee, then we have a bye, then at Alabama, Mizzou at home, LSU at home. We got to figure it out or we're going 5-7. Fix it, Brent. Dang, son. I love you, but we got to figure it out. If you are anything less than 8-4 this year, as much as it pains me to say, if we are 7-5 or worse this year, Brent Venables needs to leave. And I say this as someone who loves Brent Venables. But if we are not winning and doing better and seeing a trajectory at the end of year 4 where 2026 and then into 2027 can be years where we go and do something of value, because we aren't super battered by injuries, the offensive line is. But if we're not at a good point by the end of 2025, Brent needs to go. Now, hopefully, this loss serves as a springboard for the team. A springboard of rage, of anger, of determination, of intensity, of excellence and perfection, that we come out swinging next week against South Carolina. And we put their face to the fire and melt them. And hopefully we do that the rest of the year. I think the defense is equipped to do so. I think the offensive passing game, at least, with Mike or John, depending on whoever is the healthiest, and best prepared, in addition to healthy, is equipped to play complementary to this incredible defense. There is no more margin for error. We have to figure some stuff out. We have to dominate. Now, I hope Derek Simmons, who went out early with an injury, is all right, comes back safe and healthy. Hope John, in his hand, because he was bleeding there in the game for a while, hope he is strong, safe, healthy, and that those two guys get back to it, but get healthy first before getting back to playing, because their health is more important than us just winning. Well, Sooner Nation, wow, we went on for quite an extended amount of time. I'm known to yap a lot, so if we keep losing, don't be surprised if these get a little bit longer. But that's going to wrap it up for this edition of the Wacko Review podcast, where we break down all things OU football coming out of the weekend. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell button so you never miss an episode. Plus, remember, you can always follow us on all of our socials, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter X, for live news updates, game time highlights, and, of course, a few heavy-hearted memes and reels to try and keep it somewhat lighthearted, like we like it in Sooner Nation. Go hit those follows so you are always in the Wacko loop. Boomer Sooner.